Hey guys, welcome back to MCReviews. It's Pete here to finish off the Victory EP review. The first two tracks have been done, Victory and Hold Fast. In this video, I'm going to review Shrooms, and this video is going to be different to the other ones because it's not just the review. Since this is the last track of the EP, at the very end of the video, I'm going to be going back through the EP as a whole, which songs I liked more than others, where they all fit in together, which I know you could probably tell by my ratings, but I'm just going to go through the EP as an overall package and rate the EP as a whole, and then at the end show you what the next EP I'm going to review is going to be. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the final episode of the San Holo Victory EP review. So, Shrooms, the final track of the EP, and before I get into this, I might as well preface this by saying that this is easily my favourite song on this EP, and I'm gonna have nothing but good things to say about it. And this is probably gonna be the most positive review I've done in any of my videos so far. Anyway, for the intro, this song starts off with the beat pretty much being the focus of the song, with no melody for the first 10 seconds. When a melody does come in, it sounds like pretty typical San Holo stuff, which is fine. This pretty much goes right into a build-up for the first drop, which, to be honest, the first drop of this song, I wouldn't technically call it the first drop because I don't think there's enough going on there to call it a drop. But just for argument's sake, and so we can differentiate all the sections better, I'm gonna call it the first drop anyway. So, just like the bit before it, this first drop I'd say is mostly pretty typical San Holo fare. It's got your standard bass with the melody that is really standard San Holo kind of stuff. It's still pretty good though, but this is certainly not what makes the song special, and we'll get into that later. There's really not much to say on this drop, as it is very standard and barely a drop at all to me, and nor does it last very long. So just like the bit that came before it, the midsection isn't very long either, and is more just a build up for the next drop. This section's main feature is a female vocal chop, as well as another San Holo style melody that fits really well into the beat in the build-up section. As the build-up goes on and we get closer to the drop, you can start to tell that something isn't quite right, and the little tiny bit of strings just before the drop, almost in place of where a vocal chop goes before a lot of drops, is what brings out the hidden dark side of the song and takes us right into the second drop. So this second drop right here, along with the fourth one, which sounds almost like an evolution of this one, like many songs do, is the reason that this song is so awesome. Everything that I've said about this song up until this point has made it sound like I like this song, but it's pretty uninnovative and pretty generic San Holo stuff. But I feel that was almost on purpose in this song, so that when this drop happens, you would be taken aback and by complete surprise with how different this drop is. This drop is another one that's based around two sounds working together, and they mix together so well. The main two sounds are this one ascending sound that is comparable to the 3-note melody in the second drop of Victory that I talked about in my review of that song, but this one is way slower and darker and more like 7 notes instead of 3. The other is a really synthy backing that is quite comparable to the backing in the second half of the first drop of Victory, but yet again much darker. I only noticed this when I started reviewing this track, but the beat in this drop actually has no bass to it, so this beat is all about percussion sounds, which I love. Speaking of the beat, this drop has an awesome beat too. The actual beat itself is nothing special, but what makes it so cool is that whenever the beat hits, the backing, the synthy backing that I was talking about before, either changes note or kind of restarts, which really stops it from being stagnant and too drawn out. Another thing that I like about this drop is, as it's going on, the backing gets more and more intense and complex, with another layer being added to the backing every so often, to the point where by the end of this drop, there's 3 layers of the backing going on, which is so cool. And as the drop ends, there is this, I wouldn't say upbeat, but more wondrous melody that comes in right at the end to transition the song into the less dark side of the song, which is really cool. This all culminates together to make a much more dark, dramatic and atmospheric drop than anything else that happens on this EP. And not only is it like nothing else on this EP, it's like nothing I've heard from San Holo before. The second midsection of this song is super short and goes into the third drop very quickly, so there's very little for me to say on it. It's mostly just the same vocal chop from before the second drop, with bass and a lighter beat. This section mostly just feels like transition or a cool down from the drop we just had, so that this song can go back to the lighter tone that it had before this drop. The third drop is almost identical to the first, but one cool addition is it has these choir sounding vocals in the background, kind of giving an airier tone to the lighter side of the song. I really feel like this drop is here to add contrast to everything after it, which is fine because contrast is part of what makes this song so awesome. So of all the non-drop sections of this song, this mid-section is definitely the best of all those, and has the most variation. This section actually has the exact two same sounds that I explained before from the second drop, just being used in a completely different way, which I didn't realise until writing this review, but upon further inspection, that's really cool. The backing sound is used for backing again in this section, but it's not as dark as in the drop. The melody noise is used in a similar way, but instead of just ascending, it now ascends and descends in 3-note groups, which is really cool. The new part of this section is the super awesome vocal chop that I can barely describe, but it's super smooth and super low in pitch, which adds to the dark feeling. This section starts off without a beat, but when the beat does come in, it's super hard and intense, and I love it. This section really feels like it's bridging the gap between the lighter side and the darker side of this song, as San Holo clearly isn't trying to hide the darker side of this song anymore, as you know it's here now. Right at the end of this section, it turns into a build-up for the next drop, where the backing and the vocal chop change, or almost restart with the beat, but the melody sound is free to do its own thing, which is really cool. Right before the next drop, the whole song stops, and the vocal chop happens one last time before the last drop begins. This drop is so goddamn incredible. It's pretty much an evolution of the second drop, but this is even more dramatic than the second drop was. The backing is pretty much the same, but what really changes here is the melody sound, which now has like 3 layers instead of the one that it had in the second drop, which makes it sound a lot more dramatic. Also, another thing I didn't realise until this review is the beat in this drop, though it follows the same pattern, has this thing where the last beat at the end of each bar has a much airier sound to it, which is awesome. This drop progresses in a very similar way to the second, with the backing getting more layers as this drop goes on, though when the backing gets more layers, the melody loses one of its layers, which is a shame, but I guess it's to stop it from becoming too chaotic. Overall, this drop is just awesome, but it's more dramatic than the second drop was, as opposed to the second drop being a bit darker. Pretty much everything I said before carries over to this drop as well, both positive and negative, though I don't really know if I said anything negative about that drop. This track starts to end with one synthy melody and the first vocal chop we heard in this song, as well as the beat. By the end, it's just a very tinny sounding beat that the song began with. And at the very end of this song, it does something similar to Victory, where it sounds like something's shutting down, but there's something about the way this song does it which is even better than Victory. So before I give this song its rating, to go through the overall, I'm going to go through this song's pros and cons and kind of have a bit of a discussion about it. I only have 2 negative things to say about this song, which is the lighter and more upbeat sections, while they serve a really powerful role of providing contrast from the dark and dramatic parts of the song, at times can be a bit underwhelming, in my opinion. Not all the time, but sometimes they're just a bit boring and lacking. And my only other criticism, which is probably the most nitpicky thing I could say in the entire world, which is the melody at the end of the 4th drop, is nowhere near as good as the one that ends the 2nd drop, just because it's a bit too loud, high-pitched, and upbeat for this song, but that barely even matters because it's like 3 notes. And as for the good things, the 2nd and 4th drop of this song are super dark and atmospheric, and super unique, especially for San Holo. The song is always changing things up, with no 2 parts of the song being exactly alike, and there is no copy and paste drops to be found here. The use of vocal chops in this song is also awesome, especially the one in the mid-section. The beats may not be particularly interesting in pattern, but their role in the track is what makes them interesting. The shutting down style ending at the end of this song is a perfect way to not only end off this track, but the EP as a whole. And for all these reasons, I'm going to give this track a 9 out of 10. This is easily my favourite San Holo track, not only on this EP, but of everything I've heard from him. It really shows his darker side that I haven't heard to this great degree in any of these other songs, and it really does deserve this rating in my mind. So as we've now reviewed the final track of the EP, it's time to go over the overall of this EP, give it a final score, give my final thoughts, and walk away with some sort of reasonable idea of how I feel about this thing as a package. So, I don't think this is one of the best EPs on Monster Cat. I don't think it's up there with... It's definitely not one of my favourites. But with that being said, it is still really, really good. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's really great. Victory is somewhere in the middle between Shrooms and Hold Fast. Shrooms is my absolute favourite track. I definitely think that without it, this EP would have been dragged down a mark, but because of it, it gets dragged up a mark from the final score that you'll see. But Victory is a really, really good song with some incredible moments, but also some lacking ones in my opinion as well. Hold Fast is good. It's definitely not as good as I remember, mostly just because of the repetition of the second half. And as I've said so many times now, Shrooms is easily the best one. As an overall package, it's a nice quick listen, and of all of San Holo's stuff on Monster Cat, which to be fair isn't that much, it's just 2 EPs in the track with Jaws. But even with that being said, I'd still say this is the best of San Holo's work I've heard. Even outside of Monster Cat, though to be fair, I haven't heard that much of San Holo's stuff outside of Monster Cat, except for a few tracks like the remix of the Dr. Dre song and Light, but this is still definitely the best of it. And for all those reasons, I'm going to be giving this EP an 8 out of 10 score, which is a very solid great, which isn't quite up with the top tier stuff, but it's pretty much as close as you can get to top tier without actually being there. So I think this score is very solid, don't get me wrong, of course it's an 8, so that's pretty good, but this is a really solid score, and I would definitely listen to this EP again. So guys, that brings us to the end of the San Holo Victory EP review. Tell me in the comments, did you like it? Did you dislike it? How did you feel about my scores on everything and how I thought? Was it reasonable? Was it unreasonable to you? And that's the first EP review series in the new format. I really hope the new format is working out for you. And I'd really like you guys to comment whether you think it's better or worse than the old version, though chances of us going back to the old way of doing it are very slim. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next EP review.